Okay, so let's unpack these verses. The first one jumps right in, emphasizing the importance of satsang, associating with the wise.
Yeah.
It states, by associating with the wise one attains detachment. Now,
Mhm.
before you pack your bags for an ashram, let me ask, does wise always mean a realized sage or guru?
Not at all. The beauty of satsang is that it can take many forms. Of course, spending time with enlightened beings is incredibly powerful. But, you've been studying Vedanta for a while now. Have you noticed how even reading a profound book can feel like a form of satsang?
Oh, absolutely. There are times when a book just hits you at the right moment and completely shifts your perspective.
Exactly. Any interaction with wisdom, whether it's through a teacher, a text, or even a piece of art that sparks that inner knowing can be considered satsang. It's about immersing yourself in those influences that nourish your soul and help you see things more clearly.
So it's not just about physical proximity, but about aligning yourself with those vibrations of wisdom wherever you find them.
Right. It's about creating the conditions for that inner shift to happen. And that shift, according to this verse, leads to detachment.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The verse continues, through detachment, one achieves freedom from delusion. I have to admit, the word detachment sometimes feels a bit austere. What does it actually mean in this context?
It's definitely a word that can be easily misinterpreted. Detachment in Vedanta, or Viraja, isn't about becoming emotionless or renouncing the world. Think of it more like discerning between what truly nourishes you and what keeps you trapped in cycles of craving and aversion. Vedanta teaches that the material world, including our bodies and minds, is governed by Maya, or illusion. It's like a magician's trick. Things appear real and solid, but the reality is often quite different. Have you ever noticed how your perception of the world changes when you understand the concept of Maya?
Oh, absolutely. It's like seeing behind the curtain. You start to realize that so much of what we chase after is based on this illusion of separateness, on clinging to things that are ultimately fleeting.
Exactly. And that clinging is what causes so much suffering. Detachment is about loosening that grip, not out of a sense of deprivation, but out of a recognition that true happiness and fulfillment can't be found in those external things.
So it's not about denying ourselves pleasure or joy, but about understanding the nature of those pleasures, seeing them for what they are.
Yes, it's about finding that inner freedom that isn't dependent on those external conditions. And that freedom, as the verse suggests, leads to freedom from delusion.
Right. So the verse says, through freedom from delusion, one attains steadfastness in the truth. So delusion or moha is that misperception of separateness, that clinging to fleeting pleasures. We've all been there thinking, if I just get that new car, that promotion, that perfect partner, then I'll finally be happy.
It's a universal experience, and it stems from not recognizing our true nature, that Atman, our true self, is one with Brahman, the ultimate reality.
This reminds me of a story I heard about a spiritual teacher who asked his students, what is it that makes the waves rise and fall on the ocean? One student said, the wind, master. Another said, the moon's gravity. The teacher smiled and said, it is the ocean itself that makes the waves rise and fall.
That's a beautiful analogy. It highlights the point that we are not separate from that which we perceive as causing us suffering. The waves, our thoughts, emotions, experiences, all arise from that same ocean of consciousness.
So by associating with wisdom and cultivating detachment, we start to break free from that illusion of separateness, from that delusion of me versus the world. And that leads us to the next stage, steadfastness in the truth. But before we jump into that, I think it's a good point to pause and let everything sink in for our listener.
I agree. This is deep stuff, and it's important to really savor these insights. What stands out to you so far from what we've discussed?
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Bhaja Govindam and the concept of Jeevan Mukti. You know, it's funny, as I was reflecting on what we discussed about detachment and Maya, I started noticing just how often I get caught up in the illusion of things. Like even something as simple as traffic. I'm suddenly not just in traffic.
Yeah.
I am the traffic.
Yeah, it's so easy to get swept away by that current, isn't it?
Mhm.
But that's the power of these teachings. They offer us tools to step back and observe, to create that space between ourselves and our experience.
Absolutely. And that's what makes me so curious about this next part of the verse. It says, through steadfastness in the truth, one attains liberation while still living. What does it actually mean to be liberated while still living?
It's such a powerful concept, isn't it? Jivan Mukti, liberation in the here and now. I used to think of liberation as this far-off goal, something you achieved after years of meditation in a cave somewhere. But Jivan Mukti suggests that freedom is available to us in every moment, regardless of our external circumstances.
That's what I find so compelling about it. So how do we get there? How do we cultivate that steadfastness in the truth?
That's where Nishala Tattva comes in. It's about becoming firmly rooted in the knowledge of our true self, the Atman that is one with Brahman. Imagine a mountain unshakable amidst the storms. That's the kind of inner stability we're talking about.
Okay. That image is so powerful, but I have to admit my mind feels more like a kite in a hurricane most days.
Hmm.
How do we cultivate that kind of stillness amidst the chaos of life?
Well, think about your study of Vedanta. You've probably come across the practice of self-inquiry, right? Turning your attention inward, observing your thoughts and emotions without judgment.
Yes, absolutely. But I often struggle with that. It's like as soon as I try to sit and observe, my mind turns into a circus.
That's the Maya we were talking about earlier, the mind's tendency to create distractions and pull us away from that inner stillness. But here's the thing. You don't have to control your thoughts. In fact, trying to control them often just makes them louder. The key is to simply become aware of them, to observe them without getting caught up in their stories.
So it's more about creating that space for observation, that gap between the thought and our reaction to it.
Exactly. And as you practice this, you start to notice that you have a choice in how you respond. You're not at the mercy of your thoughts and emotions.
That's a game changer. So this steadfastness in the truth, this Nishala Tattva, it's not about emptying the mind or becoming emotionless. It's about that witnessing presence, that awareness that allows us to see things more clearly.
Beautifully put. And that clarity, that freedom from delusion is ultimately what leads to Jivan Mukti.
Okay, so we've explored satsang, detachment, freedom from delusion, and now this idea of steadfastness in the truth. I feel like we're building towards something truly profound here.
We are. We're approaching the heart of what it means to be liberated while still living. And that, I believe, is a perfect place to pause and allow our listener to reflect on these concepts. What resonates with you the most so far?
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Bhaja Govindam and the concept of Jivan Mukti. It's mind-blowing to think that liberation isn't some distant goal, but a state of being we can cultivate like right here, right now.
Yeah, it really challenges our usual understanding of freedom, doesn't it? It's not about escaping the world or achieving some superhuman state, but about experiencing a profound inner shift that allows us to live, more fully and authentically.
So we've talked about associating with the wise, cultivating detachment, and becoming firmly rooted in the truth. Now, I'm really curious about the practical implications of all this. How does this understanding of Jivan Mukti actually play out in everyday life?
That's a great question. And it's where these teachings become truly transformative. Think about your own experience with relationships. How often do we get caught up in expectations, attachments, and the fear of loss?
Oh, all the time. It's
Yeah.
like our happiness becomes dependent on other people behaving in a certain way or on things working out exactly as we planned.
Right. And that's where the suffering comes in, right? Vedanta offers a different perspective. It invites us to see all beings not as separate entities, but as expressions of that same divine consciousness that dwells within us.
So instead of clinging to people as sources of our happiness, we can approach relationships with a sense of reverence, recognizing that spark of the divine in everyone we encounter.
Exactly. And when we relate from that place of interconnectedness, we can experience a deeper level of love and compassion, a love that isn't possessive or conditional, but that celebrates the freedom and uniqueness of each individual.
It makes me think about the difference between needing someone to complete us
Mm.
and choosing to share our lives with someone who inspires us to become more fully ourselves.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And that same principle applies to how we navigate challenges and setbacks. Life is full of ups and downs, and it's easy to get swept away by those waves of disappointment, frustration, or even despair.
Yeah, I know I can spiral pretty quickly when things don't go my way. It's like that inner peace goes right out the window.
But what if we could approach those challenges with the understanding that everything is in constant flux, that change is the only constant? Instead of resisting those waves, we can learn to ride them with more grace and equanimity.
So it's not about denying the difficulty or pretending everything is fine, but about shifting our perspective, recognizing that impermanence is woven into the fabric of existence.
Yes. And this doesn't mean becoming passive or resigned. It's actually very empowering because it reminds us that we have a choice in how we respond. We can choose to react with fear and anger, or we can choose to respond with wisdom and compassion.
It's like we're not at the mercy of external circumstances, but we have this inner compass that can guide us through the storms.
Exactly. And the more we cultivate that inner compass, that steadfastness in the truth, the more we embody the qualities of a Jivan Mukta, someone who experiences liberation while still living.
So it's not about
Mhm.
escaping the world, but about transforming our relationship to it. We can still enjoy life's pleasures, but we do so with a sense of detachment, knowing that true happiness and fulfillment come from within.
Beautifully said.
Mhm.
And that inner freedom radiates outwards, influencing not only our own lives, but also the lives of those around us.
This has been such an insightful exploration of the Bhaja Govindam and the path to Jivan Mukti. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of what it means to live a liberated life.
It's been my pleasure to share these teachings with you. And remember, this is just the beginning. The path of self-discovery and liberation is a lifelong journey.
And as we've seen, it's a journey that's available to everyone, regardless of their background or beliefs. So to our listener, we invite you to reflect on these insights and see how they resonate with your own experience. What practices or perspectives from our deep dive feel particularly relevant to you right now? How might you apply them to your own life? We encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the vast ocean of wisdom that's available to us all.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of exploration.
Until next time, keep seeking and keep growing, and keep living with the awareness that liberation is always within reach.